I have the cues for the ads because apparently I have been talking over top of them. Listen, this is only my 31st year of doing radio, so I'm still kind of figure this stuff out. Um, and I don't want to have my ignorance and unprofessionalism rub off on the rest of the talk show hosts at K Talk who actually do know how to do radio. Anyway, boy, I mean, the number of breaking stories that I want to get into, including the president's flip flop on the Epstein files, whether or not they should be released, and what you're actually going to see when they are released, if you can see anything, because of all the redacting that's going to go on. Also, the potential for war in our hemisphere is growing by the day, orchestrated by the City of London in cahoots with the neocons inside the United States, number one neocon being Marco Rubio. The large U.S. armada that is now floating into the Caribbean. The Russians and the Chinese have both made their opposition known to any efforts to regime change that the Americans think they're going to do in Venezuela. And the U.S. intelligence specialists who've put out their own statement calling on the president to remember what happened with previous regime change policies. Now, also, something I just learned this morning, there is a deployment of the Russian S-400 missiles in Venezuela. I haven't been able to confirm that, but I would not be surprised that the Venezuelans purchased this some time ago, knowing what was, I mean, Venezuela has their own intelligence gathering sources, and obviously they've got a role to play in things that are going on. And I would not be a bit surprised if they didn't have a battery or two or three or four of Russian S-400 missiles. You don't play around with these things. These are the ones that surround St. Petersburg, surround Moscow, along with the new upgraded S-500s. One of the things that have held off Israel's attack on Iran, and they didn't, Iran did not defend very well the nuclear sites during the, last early summer, late spring, whenever it was, the attack on Iran, because there wasn't anything there. They had already moved all their stuff out of those sites. And so they didn't want to waste a whole lot of missiles defending those sites. But where their real nuclear development material is, you can bet is surrounded by S-400 missiles. So I've got to find out whether or not there's any truth to that. But given the fact that Russia has tried in the past to stay out of conflicts such as Iran and similar situations, I would like to confirm the presence of S-400 missiles before I talk much more about it. And given the fact that Russia has tried to stay out of these things, as I said, with Iran and similar situations, it would be necessary to really confirm this. Now, there are reports from experts from that region, and I'm looking for commercials to start playing here. There's supposed to be, I'm watching the recording, there's supposed to be an ad playing at 5 minutes after the hour, and I don't see anything coming across the recorder yet. Anyway, there are reports from Venezuela, but also from Guyana, from Brazil, from Mexico. Obviously, it would come to any kind of operation as an actual sea-based attack against Venezuela. Just, it's unthinkable. There's a very large Navy contingent there, of course, the USS Ford, the largest U.S. aircraft carrier, and a whole armada of warships with it. There's 15,000 troops, American troops in the area. And it's hard to imagine that this could lead to any kind of a land invasion, given the fact that Venezuela has a very large army. The last number I heard was somewhere in the area of 300,000 battle ready, or I don't know if it's battle ready, 300,000 troops ready to defend their homeland should we actually start to try a land invasion. I mean, I can't think of anything more stupid than to try to mount something like that. And they have quite a substantial defense system. They've got many militias. They've got many guerrillas, as well as the 300,000. I mean, it could not possibly have a very good outcome. And so when you consider, I mean, the memorandum from VIPS, the veterans, you know, the Ray McGovern group of retired intelligence professionals. What's that? How's that guy? Anyway, it doesn't matter. That it's quite possible that combined with some other kind of an operation, some political coup of some sort, you have this so-called Nobel Peace Prize winner, Machado, who's actually called for the U.S. to intervene from her own country, asking the U.S. to intervene against her own country. I mean, is that a traitor who's working in the interests of a foreign country? And the memorandum, I mean, there's good options. And I'm going to talk about that during the progress of today's program. I'm just trying to coordinate everything here in a way that I don't walk over commercials. Commercials are important. They keep the blood flowing. But given the fact that Rubio and others are already trying to get this right-wing alliance throughout the entire Western continent, I mean, it quite frankly forebodes some terrible developments. It increases, and then increases in the migrant question. I mean, we have an upgraded border patrol, upgraded ICE activity, but what do you think is going to happen if war breaks out in this hemisphere? Yeah, there won't be enough border patrol to stop what will be coming here. And but we know what the real issue here. We know what the real issue is, and the real issue is the anti-China, anti-Russian influence in the Western Hemisphere. This operation against Venezuela and some of the other countries has all of the earmarks of an anti-China operation. The reality is, the United States would decide, if the United States would decide to cooperate with China on these infrastructure projects, like the Bioceanic Railway, the Chancay seaport that's now up in operation in Peru, which could open the entire continent to further infrastructure development. You know, this is something which has been promoted since the time of Alexander von Humboldt in the 19th century, and it's an urgent question that needs to be resolved today. So I am sure anyway, that it's only, you know, a fair analysis of this situation, laying out what advantages would be if one could convince the United States to drop this angst and cooperate with BRICS in Latin America and not regard the Western Hemisphere as their own backyard, as Secretary of Defense Hegseth recently said. This is our backyard. No, there's a few other countries here, Secretary Hegseth, besides the United States. So, is it possible that Venezuela is done, and what's going on with Venezuela now is to take away the focus on the Ukraine, was the big question. And that could be very much part of the element, because the Ukrainian situation is very clear. The Russians have been making enormous progress. If you listen to any of the people who are guests on the Napolitano podcast. I mean, they're taking several villages, several towns per week. The whole Ukraine situation is obviously shattered by the corruption scandal, which is maybe a sign that some people want to finally replace Zelensky. The estimates I've seen is Zelensky already has put away $50 billion. And interestingly enough, when a lot of the cash shows up, the $100 bills, cash wrapped up in plastic, a lot of it hasn't even got to the Ukraine. They end up in other airports where they're divvied out among the oligarchs. And that corruption, the level of that is just not tenable in such circumstances as often happens when one's trying to divert attention. So with all the attention moving over to Venezuela, dropping our attention on the fact that the IDF is not honoring the ceasefire in Gaza. They're still killing Palestinians every day. Yes, of course, the claim is that Hamas is firing back at IDF, which is probably true to some degree, as they claim in their own defense. But the current situation in the Ukraine, it's an attrition thing. I mean, they're running out of manpower. It doesn't make any difference how many Patriot or HIMARS outfits that we send over there. There's nobody to man them because they're all dying left and right. I heard Scott Ritter say that the life expectancy of these 16, 17, 18-year-old boys being grabbed off the streets in Kyiv and other cities in the Ukraine who did not leave, a year or two ago when they should have left the country. Once they have a uniform put on them, and once they're showed which end of the gun the bullet comes out of and thrown onto the front line, if they live 4 to 6 hours, they've outlived the normal amount of time. And then, oh my goodness, the surrender numbers with 20,000 Ukrainian soldiers now completely surrounded in the southern, not all that far from Zaporizhia, completely surrounded, and the ultimatum from the Russians: lay down your weapons, and we'll take you prisoner. We'll take care of you. We'll attend to your wounds. We'll feed your bellies. We'll make sure you're warm. Just lay down your weapons and surrender, and we will not kill you. And then from the Ukrainian side, the Ukrainians are saying, if you lay down your weapons, we will turn the drones away from the Russians and turn them on you. You remember that scene from Enemy at the Gate about Zaitsev, Vasily Zaitsev, the great Russian sniper, there at the Battle of Stalingrad. His name slips my tongue. Who played him? Just a great movie. Ed Harris is in there, and anyway, one of the opening scenes is where the Russians are bringing in all these Russian boys on trains. The train doors are locked, so they can't get off the train until the train arrives there at the harbor. They're put in boats, taken across the river to the eastern side of the Volga, and then given a gun. Every other one is given a gun with the instructions that the one who didn't get the gun, when the one in front of you is shot and falls down, you take his gun and keep marching forward. I kind of encourage how to stir some real patriotism in anybody. And then how, when it became obvious that they were just machine gun fodder, some of them turned around and returned and tried to retreat. And as soon as they started to retreat, their own Russian officers shot them, retreating back across the field. I can't imagine horror like that. You see it in movies, and it's based on what happened. It's based on the truth, the factual truth, but it's still almost impossible to imagine. And then here The Ukrainian army is telling those 20,000 encircled Ukrainian forces, if you surrender, we will turn the drones from the Russians to you and take you out. So, and then that on top of the corruption that's going on in Ukraine and the billions of dollars that are being funneled to the Ukrainian oligarchs, and how many of them are already splitting the country. And then words from Putin, from Zachariah, or from the Russian Federation, about turning the troops north and moving then across the Dnieper towards Kyiv, if Kyiv doesn't finally stop this nonsense. So there's a large part of those monies that were simply robbed from us, from we taxpayers, in various countries, not just our country, actually line the pockets of these oligarchs in the Ukraine, including a lot of the weapons trade, which turns up in all kinds of places all around the world. I mean, it's an obviously stinking sinkhole. A lot of the money that we've sent over there that's supposed to be buying armament and army support material to support their logistics for their upcoming defeat of the Russian army. A lot of that money is being used to buy weaponry from the United States, supposed to go to Ukraine, that instead is being diverted to other parts of the world, like sub-Saharan Africa, to the Sudan, to Nigeria, to wherever warfare is taking place, and sold at extremely high rates. I mean, the corruption is just, it's just unbelievable. And then this threat from Ursula von der Leyen and Kaja Kallas, the foreign minister of the European Commission, trying to steal Russian assets that are being held in various European countries, or just take a loan against it. That's the latest thing, you know, because of what Belgium said. Belgium said, no way in hell are we going to give you the Russian money. If we give you the Russian money, nobody else will ever invest in our banks again. We're not about to give it to you. And then so von der Leyen is saying, well, we'll kind of embargo it in the sense of we will loan money against it. I think there's some people, including the Belgian government, as I said, which is warning in the strongest terms against this, because if you do, then all the pretext, as I said, of having any legitimacy in these financial places will vanish from the minds of any other countries in the world wanting to invest in their bonds or whatever else. I mean, who's going to put any money into any European countries afterwards, let alone Belgium? And Russia has already said they would answer with very severe countermeasures. There's many Western assets inside Russia, which Russia said that they would confiscate in return. And then given the extreme fragility of the financial markets, where the various crypto, Bitcoin, other so-called stable coin currencies have been losing in these days, last few days, quite a bit. Then there's talk about the AI bubble having maybe not the final crash of the whole system, but a lot of internal turbulence as AI continues to gather more and more power and it turns its attention on the financial structures. I mean, it's a move that could bring down the entire system. I think that's why some people are very hesitant to go ahead with it. But on the other side, there's people like von der Leyen and Kaja Kallas, very desperate. I mean, their policies just are not working out very well. And so here, the domestic situation here, particularly a spat that Donald Trump has had with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson over the Epstein files. But, you know, is there a phase shift going on here? That was the question that was asked. Is there a phase shift that the American people are beginning to recognize that they have power and that they can move Congress and they can even move the president? Because there's all these questions. I think I think there's clearly signs for that. For Marjorie Taylor Greene to stick to her position, she's basically supported, talking for a very good part of the MAGA base for Trump. She was there at the very beginning. She was MAGA before MAGA was cool. And now look what's happening. I'm really shocked. Not totally shocked as I'm surprised, but still shocked about the real character streak which Trump is showing. I mean, here you have Marjorie Taylor Greene. I may not have agreed with everything she said from the beginning because of slightly different political orientations, but she stuck with Trump in the time when he was really under attack. She was one of his greatest defenders, and she's gone out of her way trying to back Trump, like Congressman Massey and some of the others. But those two in particular, and then for Trump to turn around and attack her like this. I mean, she reported that after Trump called her a traitor, which is really something, she said she got threats on her life and that private security firms approached her telling her that they would offer protection or whatever. And then Trump commented on that, saying, nobody cares about Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's not important. That's just plain ugly. I don't care if this was going on among Democrats. That is just completely ugly and uncalled for. I think Trump somehow doesn't seem to recognize that. He's obviously surrounded by people who are steering him in a different direction. And he does not show any empathy to some of his most faithful supporters. So I think he's starting to lose his base, because I think there's a significant portion of his base who are America firsters, not Israel firsters. And when you see by little comments that are leaked here and there from time to time, especially as printed in Financial Times or Washington Post, of American leadership coming out and bragging about how they're Israel firsters, America seconders. Israel first, Israel first. And how long is this going to go on? This is, if this continues in this vein, the Democratic backlash in next year's midterms, they're going to grab the House, they're going to grab the Senate, they're going to throw the president out. Well, he'll be impeached and tried probably in a 24-hour period and thrown out of office. And then it might not be very long before Vance follows him. I mean, this is to the point where I think Trump has shifted his line, because I think he's recognized that he doesn't have control of the Republican Party like he thought he did. So he shifted his position 100%. It's like this Epstein file controversy. I think he shifted his position twice now, 100%. I mean, there's obviously an awful lot more that, like I've always said before, whenever anything occupies a majority of the news, it's a diversion of some kind. Now, there's some things downright assassination, the Charlie Kirk thing, yeah, of course, but other things that are going on, like I started the program today, all this hubbub about Venezuela, I think is to take attention off of Ukraine. Because as, who is it that keeps saying, I think it's Douglas McGregor, Colonel McGregor, who keeps saying all the time, Trump needs a win. He needs a really big win. And he hasn't got his win in Ukraine, although they put forth this 2025 peace plan thing. That's just all show and tell. It isn't going to go anywhere because the West is not going to agree to it. And Russia is not going to back down from their position. Russia is not going to give up the territory that they've gained. They're not going to allow Ukraine to become a part of NATO. And the Ukrainian army will be shrunk way back before the special military operation began. They can be left with an army. It was just like the Versailles decisions about the German army that would be lucky, to put off a mad rush at Best Buy during Black Friday. And so I think that's one of the reasons why Trump has turned his back on it and is leaving that and is focusing on Venezuela. And then the whole thing about Venezuela isn't over drugs. Oh, gosh. The way you stop drugs is you stop the market inside the United States. You either legalize them or you actually start doing something about punishing the distributors. And we know that there are, without me going too far into it, certain government organizations that are behind the control of drugs in America simply because they need that money for their black operations. That's how you stop drugs in America. No, it's about keeping China and Russia out of the Western Hemisphere. And China has done so much already. So, this Epstein thing, I mean, the question is, the so-called devastating parts of it are going to be redacted. You know that. A lot of black color all over the text. When you've seen this with so-called previous FBI releases, where you couldn't make out the meaning of the text because everything was redacted. I mean, that remains to be seen, but we should know about that probably before Christmas. But obviously, this question deserves some more investigation. As disgusting as this trade with underage girls and young women has been, and obviously it does reflect on the disgusting character of these rich men who just buy these young girls. Totally disgusting, but I'm convinced that's just the tip of the iceberg. Because the question is, who is Epstein? I mean, if you look at his career, he was very much interwoven with all the people who were responsible for the deregulation of the financial markets, the invention of creative financing. And when you think about that, the trafficking, I mean, the real scandal is the sex part of the Epstein affair. But that's just the social side. The real crime of the Epstein affair, and I think they may be covering this up more than anything else, is the illegal money laundering that he was doing. All kinds of shady operations that were linked to weapons trade. I mean, I think if people would earnestly start to dig into this, it would actually lead to cleaning out all the entire dirty practice of the present financial system. So what do I mean by that? Well, remember the network that was behind the junk bond stuff, the money laundering of all money laundering. It was the network behind that operation of Michael Milken that funded Epstein from the beginning. And even up until his final arrest in, 2018, 2019, the importance of that is that this is an organized crime gang that was protected by the U.S. government because of what they were doing. These market financial innovations. They were breaking down the old banking system, the old financial system, and replacing it with this speculative system that was largely funded by the laundering of drug money and arms trafficking money. Now, a lot of people are all caught up with the sex crimes because that's the scandalous part. That's the easy part to understand. If you see a photo of a prominent character, a man, and sitting in his lap is a 14-year-old girl, remember the photo that busted Warren Jeffs? I mean, Warren Jeffs had enough problems until that one photo came into the market a little over 10 years ago. Remember it? I remember it. It was shocking. I mean, it takes a lot to shock me. That photo shocked me. Warren Jeffs is standing there with a 12-year-old girl as his latest wife, his new bride. He already had about 60 of them. And here's his new one, and she's 12 years old, and her parents are just thrilled that the prophet of the FLDS church chose their daughter to be his next wife. And then that photograph hit, and then all hell broke loose because we can't stand sex crimes. Well, what if the sex crimes of Epstein and the stuff that keeps getting brought up all the time is a cover of something worse than that? Is there something worse than paying or trafficking in or rewarding these young ladies? And listen, I don't mean that in an equitable sense by any means. I mean the fact that this is just disgusting as it can be, but there could be something worse than the seduction of a 14, 15-year-old girl by a 60-year-old man. Is it possible there could be something worse than that? How about through arm twisting, through photographs, compromising photographs of certain key individuals in certain key financial circles to keep the deregulation program going, so that all the money laundering through weapons trade, through financial instruments with other countries can be covered up. And on the one hand, there's the sexual part. On the other hand, there's the billions of dollars that are being deposited in unregulated banking systems that Epstein was very much involved with, all the way back to the earliest days of those who were responsible for deregulating the financial markets. Deregulating in the sense of moving further and further what these markets were doing outside the introspection of the SEC. Then you find out that Epstein, even before there was any talk of his island, before there was any talk of sex trading underage girls, he was involved with Adnan Khashoggi, one of the key players of the Iran-Contra affair, in the Al Yamama arms deal, the BAE deal from South Africa. I get this, or Saudi Arabia. I get this from Harley in an investigative report he did. I think it's already published. He also had a very strong involvement with the Israeli intelligence through his partnership with Ehud Barak, who was the prime minister of Israel at the time. And there apparently, as far as domestic characters are involved, in the sense of pictures with Epstein, nobody had more pictures with Epstein than Donald Trump, except for Ehud Barak. There are, I'm sure it's an exaggeration, but there were statements to the effect that I never saw commercials come across my screen here, so I don't know if I overtalked them or not. I don't want to do that, but that's why I'm watching the recording here. But his involvement, I got off track there, Epstein's involvement with Israeli intelligence, and through his partnership with Barak, I said, there's an awful lot more to say about this. More is coming out all the time. So I think what they're finally admitting is not just the sex part. because they're not giving you the full story. And the full story, I think, and I get a lot of this from Harley and from other sources. I think what's going on is the transition to an artificial intelligence economy. So what do you hear? You hear about digital banking. And you think, oh, we can't do that because if we don't really have a species to trade, then there's no way we can keep track of finances. We've got to have cash. We have to have checks. We have to have cash because, gosh, one of these days the payoff in the Powerball lottery is going to be $2 billion that you're just going to you got to go to your ATM and get some cash to go buy a lottery ticket. I know that's ridiculous, but you get the point here. And so we get all upset and worried about a digital banking system where you will end up having some kind of a little tiny chip under your finger, under your thumb, palm of your hand, wherever else. And just as you now lay your credit or debit card down on that little tap area where you tap your card against it and registers without you having to put in any kind of metrics into the system to identify yourself, eventually it'll be your thumb or your hand. And we get all caught up in that, not realizing that's not the worst part of it. The worst part of it is an artificial intelligence financial economy, which is where a lot of this seems to be headed, wherein you will be completely at the control of the one world system. Now, I want to get more into Marjorie Taylor Greene. I briefly talked about the Gaza, probably get into more of that tomorrow. Briefly talked about Ukraine, briefly talked about Venezuela. Spent a lot of time here on whatever you're told is going on, whatever in the sense of, regardless of what news channel you go to, they're all talking about the same thing. That's the Dodge. That's the butterfly flitting around in front of you, taking your attention, while Muhammad Ali's bee is getting ready to come in with a left hook and take you out. Float like a butterfly, but sting like a bee, he said. Well, I think the intelligence system in our government picked that up. Whatever is prominent in the news, there may be some exceptions, but my experience is it's just diversion to take your attention off of something that's even worse. I think I don't want to. We're hearing so. I don't think I want to leave Gaza yet. Something just came to mind. I mean, we're not hearing as much about Gaza in the last days, but there's this pro-Palestinian group in the UK is saying that the IDF are still killing Palestinians, including children. They're showing the videos. They're showing how the IDF is violating the ceasefire. And unfortunately, the facts on the ground don't give much reason for hope for a ceasefire, because the killing on the ground in Gaza is just going fully ahead. I mean, there's much less humanitarian aid getting in compared to what Israel had promised. And the fact that the U.S. resolution just passed the UN Security Council with Russia and China abstaining, it's not quite comprehensible to me, frankly, but I think that all the formulations that I think are crucial, including two-state solution, the role of the Palestinians in the future government, all that is left completely undefined. So I'm not entirely sure why Russia and China abstained from that agreement. They probably have their reasons, but sometimes there are things that are not exactly clear. But concerning the West Bank, I've got some comments I want to make about that, but I need to do a commercial first. Our annual Black Friday sale for our products, a standard process that a lot of people wait for. And because of the long shelf life of these products, a lot of people wait until this Black Friday period to buy a year's supply of these products. They have anywhere from 3 to 4 year shelf life, depending on what you get. So I know some of my patients who wait for the Black Friday sale to get the supplements that I recommend on my weekly health show and get a year's supply in advance. Now, I think it's important, as I've tried to point out in some recent health shows, just the declining nutritional value and quality of the food that we're buying for our families. Your diets have got to be supplemented. Even the most, as careful as I am shopping for organic material, I still supplement every day. And I still feel pretty good at 75. I think I'm working too hard. I'm pushing I can't continue to work at the level I'm working. I don't want to burn out, but at the same time, I want to be able to take care of people when I'm 90. Someone asked me the other day, as I hear at least once, sometimes twice a day, "You're not going to retire, are you?" No, I don't see myself retiring, but I might be cutting back a little bit in how hard I'm working. But one of the things that keeps me going is supplementing. And as I've said many times, the supplements I take make up my morning breakfast. I probably won't eat till 1 or 2 this afternoon. And so as I recognize the declining quality of the foods that we're eating produced by commercial food companies, supplementing it goes without argument. It's absolutely essential. And so why not spend your money on a good sale that happens only once a year? If you're going to get supplements, now's this week, starting I think Wednesday night, I think the thing starts and goes through Sunday at forbiddendoctor.com. 20% discount on all of our products. Now, because of the great popularity of the enzymes, I can only allow 1 bottle per buyer. People will usually buy many of them at one time. Before the next shipment is available, we have people who buy the stuff on subscription, monthly subscriptions, and I've got to make sure we have enough to maintain for the subscriptions. However, everything else, 20% off. We only do that one time a year. And that will start this Wednesday. And so, why? When you get a discount like that, you're not going to see that discount anywhere else. Why not take advantage of it? All right, now let me get back to something about the Gaza. Especially the West Bank. Oh, the office number is 801-523-1890. You can order online, you can order over the phone, or you can just come in over the counter, and we'll take care of it. Also, my 2-for-1. I think, I'm not sure that all those spaces are full this week. I think they might be. But I'm taking care of 2 new patients for the price of 1 through the end of December. And those spaces are filling up pretty quick. And I just offer that to the K-Talk audience. There are other people who are coming in that will be paying a little bit more money than that. But as a thank you to K-Talk audience, I'm cutting the price in half through the end of the Christmas season. All right, now let me, and again, 801-523-1890, or you can go to jackstockwell.com and register for a consultation there. And they're free. Consultations are free. There's no charge unless you want me to take care of you. If you want to come in and talk about what's going on, that's fine. There's no charge until you say, all right, let's do it. Now, concerning the West Bank, the annexation is fully underway. The intention to make a two-state solution is completely impossible simply by having so many settlements all over the place that there's no land left for a two-state solution. I mean, just think of the genius behind that, that the Israeli Knesset has done. The West Bank doesn't belong to Israel, but they're acting like it does. And so the IDF is going in, one community after another, and cleaning out all the Palestinians, shooting those who try to defend themselves. And then once the place is cleaned out, we know of an operation going on. I forget the name of the operation, but it's out of Manhattan, where Jewish families that want to emigrate to Israel, they're on the list. And when another community in the West Bank's been cleaned out of the Palestinians, they're notified, hey, we got a house for you. Come on over. And then they emigrate here and immigrate there. And so the more and more of this area that you take over is less and less of an area that could be considered the other half of a two-state solution. But that's not the last word, because Israel cannot forever continue to make enemies. I mean, there's hardly anybody left on this planet that they haven't offended, as was evidenced in the opening session in September of the United Nations General Assembly, when everybody got up and walked out when Netanyahu got up to speak. Everybody got up and walked out. The only remaining representation was the United States and Israel. So there are a lot of people warning that in this kind of middle term of time during this so-called peace deal, that this is very risky for Israel to take land that's not theirs. Now, in the last International Peace Coalition, Gershon Baskin, who was an official negotiator between Stephen Witkoff and Hamas, he said that the need for the United States and China to cooperate together to implement the Oasis Plan in order to give life back to this bombed-out country. And given the fact that there are just so many other factors and forces, like the different Palestinian ambassadors, the Palestinian ambassador to Copenhagen, to several others who completely endorse this plan, they're just not going to give up on it. As well they shouldn't. Now, I think, what time is it? Oh my goodness, it's top of the hour. I wanted to say something about Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'm having a real hard time swallowing this. A real hard time. From somebody who, I mean, she's walking away from the swamp. The same swamp that Trump was going to clean up, and now he's drowning in the swamp himself. And she's leaving as of January 1st, leaving her House of Representatives from Georgia, whatever spot that was, the 14th district. I'm not sure where that is. Not because of some scandal she's caught up in, like Santos. but because she can no longer, in good conscience, be a politician in Washington, D.C. She's walking away from the swamp. And the political situation in Washington now is simply beyond fixing. You may want to take some steps to protect yourself, because I think the Republican ship is going down. I voted for Trump for a number of reasons, not the least of which I couldn't sustain the alternative. And when the real heat came out, and it's interesting how much Russiagate has been exposed now, and there are people being indicted, Bolton, Comey, and that's just the beginning. Wait till they get to the Clintons. For the part that they played in all that fraud. And more information about the fraud of the 2020 election is coming forth. You would think Trump would be grabbing for all of the ongoing support he's had up to this point. Just hold on to it tenaciously. And then when Marjorie Taylor Greene, the first MAGA representative that I know of that mentioned the genocide in Gaza and how the United States was supporting that genocide, boy, that's when all hell broke loose. Same thing with Tucker Carlson. I don't know if Rand Paul has mentioned the word genocide, but you don't say words like that in an Israeli-controlled government. And Israel controls the direction of our elected officials in the Senate and the House of Representatives more than their home districts do. And I may be wrong, but I think Utah is probably a very pro-Israel, Israel first state. So when she comes out and says, that's it, when the president calls her a traitor, when she was his biggest supporter at one time, and has continued to support him, despite his baptism in the waters of the Jordan and becoming an Israeli firster himself. Don't you start to get this feeling of hopelessness for the future? And then you look at the cost of living in this country. I was talking to somebody yesterday who makes a pretty decent income. Both he and his wife work. They're in a house they're renting for 13 years now because there's no way they can put together a down payment to buy a house. Well, you've got the legislature in Washington, D.C. sidelined by AIPAC. You've got the Senate sidelined by AIPAC. You got the president sidelined by AIPAC. And it begins to, the stink of the swamp starts getting worse and worse. And when you combine the influence of AIPAC and Israel first thinking, especially among the so-called Christian Zionists, on the one hand, then you have the work of America's oligarchs through Wall Street and the continuation of their building their economic power at the same time the dollar is losing strength around the world. At what point in the power structure does someone abandon their belief in the principles of this nation and go after money? Which brings up something about the love of money. That phrase in the New Testament, the love of money is the root of all evil. That's a bad interpretation. In the Greek, what it really says is the desire to be rich, is where evil springs from, not the love of money. I don't know that the love of money has anything good or bad in and of itself. What you do with it, of course, is what's important, or how you make it. But it's that desire to be rich. Philogoria is the Greek word. Philogoria, the desire to be rich, is the root of all evil. And so when you get to a point where you can get on the inside and you start making decisions that fall more in line with philogoria than the founding principles of this nation, you can find yourself quickly seduced, I believe, into sustaining and supporting ideas and principles that you would not normally do as you see your bottom line wealth increase. An increase to the point where you're not just a millionaire, you're approaching billionaire status without ever leaving your computer screen. And so when I read through the letter that Marjorie Taylor Greene wrote to her constituency about how she just cannot any longer support the swamp, she needs to go home and take care of things at home first. She said this: with that, she says, my only goal and desire has always been to hold the Republican Party accountable for the promises it makes to the American people to put America first. I have fought against Democrats' damaging policies like the Green New Deal, wide open, deadly, unsafe border policies, trans agenda on children. What that has brought is years of nonstop, never-ending personal attacks, death threats, lawfare, ridiculous slander, and lies about me that most people can never withstand for a day. I have too much self-respect and dignity and love for my family, way too much, and do not want my sweet district to have to endure a hurtful and hateful primary against me by the president we all fought for, only to fight and win my election while Republicans will likely lose the midterms, and in turn be expected to defend the president against impeachment after he hatefully dumped tens of millions of dollars against me and tried to destroy me. Wow. If I had a photograph of her, I think I would put it up on the wall. I will be resigning from office with my last day being January 5th, 2026. Then I'm going back to the people I love, to a life lived to the fullest, as I always have, and look forward to a new path ahead. People possess the real power over Washington. And when that happens, I'll be by their side to rebuild it. Wow, what a beautiful letter. Almost brings me to tears. All right, station ID ought to be showing up here pretty quick as it comes across my screen, and then that will be it for today. I appreciate those on the stream. I notice when I make comments against President Trump, the stream numbers go down. I'm sorry. I just call it the way I see it. President Trump is getting some very, very bad advice. All right, this is K-Talk, AM 1640, Sandy, Salt Lake. I'm going to stop the recording. And then I got to bring something up here to play. For those of you on the stream, I bid you a fond adieu. I thank you for your participation. If you can like and subscribe, it'll help the numbers. The health show stream has about 840 subscribers now. Just need to get to that big 1,000 number. All right, for those on the stream,